Let me welcome you to this last edition in this particular series of Call My Bluff, and as you see, I've won my team colours. Not much use for putting round your neck, but it keeps up your cricket trousers. That's the thing. But anyway, we have all won our team colours, and we're very proud to bat under the colours of the dear old OED, awarded his for unfailing cheerfulness in adversity, Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Very happy to have with me again on my left Ruth Madoc. And on my right, Melvyn Bragg.
And awarded his colours for sheer deviousness on the field of play, Frank Muir.
And back with me comes super actress Jane Lapotaire. And the chief editor of Oxford Dictionaries, Dr. Burchfield.
Now, ring the bell for the last time in this series. Well, no, for the first time of the last time in this series. Gormagon is the excellent word we get, and as you recall, Arthur Marshall and his team will define Gormagon 3 different ways. 2 are no good. One of them's the true one. That's the one that Frank and Co. try and pick out. So off you go, Arthur. Gormagon.
Gormagon was the trade name about a century ago of an American explosive of tremendous power. It was used for blasting in quarries and mines and so on. And another interesting point about it was that the formula contained a very high proportion of picric acid, which reminded many people who know about such things of the English explosive called lyddite, which was also heavy with picric acid.
Picric acid used to get put on cuts when you were young.
It was indeed. It was also used for explosions in mines.
Oh, the old gentlemen reminisce, don't they? Oh, well. Let's ask Melvyn Bragg what he says.
Well, a Gormagon was a member of the Venerable Society of Gormagons, which was a semi-secret society which sprung up in the 18th century when lots of English societies and clubs sprang up at the inspiration of a Chinese gentleman whose name has not yet been traced or verified. And as far as we can tell, the Order of the Gormagons was rather like a form of Freemasonry.
OK, now Ruth Madoc tells you.
A Gormagon. Now, to an aristocratic Roman gypsy, a Gormagon means a gypsy that is on a lower social strata than himself. So, a haughty Spanish noble gypsyman wouldn't give his only daughter in marriage to a Gormagon. It would be totally beneath him.
Could sell her, couldn't it?
So, it's a gypsy despised by other gypsies.
Yes.
It's a sort of explosive, and it's a member of a certain sort of secret society. And Frank is going to have to choose.
No problem, Alfred. It's not no self-respecting explosive containing picric acid would call itself Gormagon. So you may retire from the show and the profession, Arthur. Whether it's the 18th century club, which sounds very strange, or whether it's this common gypsy, is the problem. But we, as one, go for Melvyn.
He did say it was a member of a secret society. Melvyn, true or bluff? He owns up now. Well done. Well done. Of course it was, yes, a member of a secret society, just such as Melvyn explained. Let's have another word. Parsable? Parsable? I don't know, but Frank will tell us.
It's impossible. Impossible is quite clearly a grammatical adjective, meaning capable of being parsed. That is, a sentence capable of being split up into its parts. For instance, the cat sat on the... Am I going too fast for your notes?
Get on.
The cat sat on the mat can be split up into its parts. But whereas a thing like coronation, line of Coronation Street, like Woody Ecker's like, is not really parsable. Is that of some help to you?
No.
Let's hear
Simply
what
ghastly.
Robert Burchfield says.
Parsable is the shape of an arm, and in the 17th century, surgeons used to put your arm above an object shaped like an arm and take your blood from it and let it drop in the bowl. That is a parsable.
So you say? Well, Jane Lapotaire.
Well, I'm sure you're all familiar with the phrase, pass the parsable. That's a Greek phrase. It's come down into the English over many centuries, and in fact, in spite of its Indian connotations like parsi, parsable is actually a Greek robe covered with mythological animals, astronomical signs.
Lovely.
It was you would look great. It would look wonderful with a tie, Frank. This parsable, stars, moons, animals, used in Greek ceremonies.
Right, so it's something that a sentence able to be parsed. It is a cupping vessel or something that holds the blood when you did that, and it's a ritual sort of robe, originally Greek, and Arthur must choose.
What a terrible choice.
It's the career you've chosen, Arthur.
I can't believe it's this Greek robe covered in mythological animals. I really can't. Of course, it may well be. Frank's is really too potty to be almost to be considered, and may therefore be a sort of double treble bluff. And this Bob's shape of an arm. Oh, it's so dreadful. Oh, Lord. Jane, it's you.
Do you really think it is? She said it was a ritual sort of robe coming from the Greek. She'll own up now. True or bluff? Nothing. I don't think the ties are helping any of us up. Let's see who gave the true definition of this word. Parsable.
Woody Ecker did.
You could parse Woody Eck, I did. You know, it would be difficult, but you could do. Parsable. Yes, it simply means able to be parsed. Sometimes it's true. Furrow is the way I'd pronounce it. Melvyn, I don't know.
A furrow is a frightening phenomenon that sometimes shocks superstitious sailors, and it can be found in a lot of novels, particularly 19th century novels about the sea. It's a ball of light that leaps about on top of the masts or the yards, particularly before or during thunderstorms, and it comes about because of a charge of static electricity. That's a furrow.
OK. Now we ask Ruth. What does she say?
Furoli is a word used for a brand-like substance that appears sometimes in the brewing of beer. Now, why this brand-like substance appears is because somebody now and again puts in bad malt into the brewing of the beer.
Villain.
Terrible.
How anybody could
Awful.
be so.
I don't think they do that in Wales, mind you. But that was what furoli is. But in Burton-on-Trent, it's a jokey name for dandruff. So you often hear them say, "Hey, Madoc, you've got furoli on your jacket."
certainly wouldn't want dandruff in your beer, would you? I mean, soon have the bran-like substance. Anyway, Arthur, what does he say?
A furore is a profound act of homage, an obeisance, a prostration before some eminent person, a sovereign or whatever it may be. Debutantes in the days when there were royal courts would be making a furore. And in the state papers of Henry VIII, there's an entry saying, emissaries from the Duke of Württemberg made their furores at court.
In basins.
Well,
I'm overlooking that.
It is the last in the series.
I'm just trying to get it right.
Absolutely. I think it does you credit. It's supposed to be bran and or dandruff. It's a ball of light seen by sailors at the top of masts and thereabouts. It's an act of homage. Robert, it's your turn.
It's your...
Arthur, what language does this furore come from?
I'm not prepared to elaborate.
That's the only clue that would give it away. The frightening phenomenon, Melvyn, I'm so pleased to hear phenomenon, not phenomena, but the ball of light is called St. Elmo's fire. No, maybe it's a synonym. Maybe it's not. The bran-like substance in brewing beer sounded marvellous, so long as it's only meaning in the brewing of beer. Dandruff won't do it at all. Not in these circles.
No?
No.
Oh.
So I think I must actually go, despite the fact that he doesn't know what it comes from, to Henry VIII, Arthur VIII, profound act of homage.
Arthur the First. But he certainly said it was a profound act of homage. True or bluff, Art?
Doctor, how did you guess?
Now we'll see who gave the true definition of furole or furole.
Well, your synonyms have caught you out.
It is that ball of light that is sometimes seen at the top of masts. Pinkster is our next word, and it's Robert Burchfield's turn.
Pinkster is another word ending in ER, and it therefore isn't a noun but a verb. It's a Herefordshire verb, and it means to daub with a mixture of rough cast, mortar and lime. So if you've got a nice semi-detached somewhere and you're in Herefordshire, you might think of daubing it on your semi-detached, rough-cast Herefordshire cottage.
Why not a detached?
Do you know, I was thinking that, Arthur. Yes. Well,
Men of property.
Jane, your turn.
Oh, I was really happy when I saw this word. This is a word I learned when I was in America. It's come into American slang from Dutch immigrants. And somebody said to me, hey, come up to our house in Connecticut, we're going to have the most wonderful Pinkster. And I thought, oh, come on, please, what am I going to let myself in for? And they said, no, don't get worried. This is American slang coming from the Old Dutch, meaning Whitsun. Come and have a great Whitsun with us in Connecticut. It has rather sort of bad overtones because, in fact, apparently at Whitsun all the Dutch used to get absolutely sloshed and fall about New York. But the word is still quite current in New York slang. Pinkster, Whitsun.
Right. Now, what does Frank tell us?
But kipper's a noun, Doctor. Yeah. That ends in the R.
True, yes, quite right. Well,
there was a slight edge to your tone there, Frank. Just a slight one.
What was the word? Oh, Pinkster. Pinkster, as you all know, is the old word for one of those untrustworthy or other shady horse copers. And he buys up... copers, yeah, a horse coper, who buys up run-down horses, followed by a pack of dogs looking for their dinner, you know, and sells them at fairs to credulous customers. And the dictionary, as the Doctor will remember, describes a Pinkster as one of... as he of dubious ethics.
Right. Well, it's sort of a... sort of a horse.
Always a bit quiet.
Sort of a horse coper. It's a slang term for Whitsun, still current in New York, and it's to daub houses with a certain mixture, but only in Herefordshire, and if they're semi-detached, I think.
Have a chat.
Melvyn.
I think he wants a chat.
Oh, good. He does well to consult you, Arthur. You'll be able to tell him.
Well, I was very taken with the idea of to daub, even though you said Herefordshire. Pinkster reminded me of painting. There's a Latin root there more than an English dialect root. So if it was a Latin root, it could have slipped into an English dialect. And so that seemed a good one to go on, but also a good invention. So I put that to the side for a second. There's a German word rather like Pinkster, rather like the Dutch word, I think, meaning Whitsun, or to do with Whitsun, so that might be a clue. And as for the horse coper, that seemed quite... I think it's the... Although I've never heard it myself, I'm going to try the American slang Dutch word in Connecticut.
Well, that was Jane who said that, wasn't it? True or bluff, Jane? Own up. Yeah. Ice cold logic there, Mel. Well done.
Help from the team.
I was a bit disturbed, actually, because I lost concentration, because Arthur's chatette, it suddenly occurred to me, it's surely a French word for kitten.
This is what in the army they call putting down smoke, Frank. It won't do. 2-2. Huskin's the next one. Ruth?
Huskin. This is a nickname for... It's really the nickname for a disciple of John Huss, the 15th century Bohemian religious reformer, who was the rival, if you like, of Martin Luther. So that's what a Huskin is.
All right.
He is a disciple.
Sorry. Are you going to say it again?
Sorry, yeah. Just in case I didn't understand
Rub
the
it
first
in,
time. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got that now. I think it's Arthur's turn now.
Huskin is really a contraction of two words. Hus meaning dogfish, and skin meaning skin. Therefore, dogfish skin. A very rough, scaly skin, rather like emery paper, which in the days...
Emily paper?
Emery paper. Switch on your contraption. Emery paper. And very, very rough. And in the days when they had bows and arrows, the Fletchers used to polish the bows and the arrows with huskin, with dogfish skin. It's very rough.
Well, I must say, when you want Arthur, you strike like a cobra. Let's hear from Melvyn now. Melvyn's go.
Huskin's a very old name. As far as is known, it was first mentioned in the Book of St. Albans in 1496, and it's the name given to a company of hares. Since then, it's fallen into disuse. It's become virtually obsolete and been replaced by a drove of hares, a trace of hares, a trip of hares, but there used to be a huskin or a huskin of hares.
OK. They say, then, that it's a disciple of John Huss. It's a gathering of hares, a company of hares, and it's the skin of the dogfish, once used for utilitarian purposes. Jane Lapotaire.
Oh, dear, this is a difficult one. I can't believe that somebody called Huskin was a Bohemian reformer. It seems like a contradiction.
No, it's John Huss.
Yes, but, I mean, a Huskin, a follower of a man who was a Bohemian, it sounds a little bit suspicious to me. I'll pass that one by.
Absolutely.
Dogfish skin and polishing arrowheads. I mean, Arthur, I was lost. I was really, really lost, which makes me think that you're so good at this bluffing and double bluffing. It's probably you, because all Melvyn's bit about hares and 1496 and... Well, I think it's Arthur.
Arthur, he said it was the dogfish skin that polished things. True or bluff? No! The true definition must now be forthcoming. Yes. A Huskin was a disciple of John Huss. Who would have doubted it? Well, the next word is, I'd say, holus bolus. Jane?
Holus bolus. Well, you know how children get words wrong. This is a word from childhood. An old word that children used to use a long time ago. It's to do with magic and magicians. It's a word for a 17th century conjurer or juggler.
All right.
A holus bolus.
A good enough name too. Frank?
What would your reaction be if I said that a holus bolus is an old word pre-deep freeze and refrigerators for a leftover dish? How does that grab you? Would you buy that? It was like a sort of cold shepherd's pie kneaded into a I'm not making myself very attractive.
It sounds perfectly disgusting.
It's anything you can do cold with leftovers and mang them together.
Lunch.
Well said. Now, Robert, it's your go.
Well, I'm about to launch into some hocus-pocus about holus bolus. It's, of course, Latin. US means Latin. And there was a member of Parliament in 1897 called Mr. Balfour, who said that the bill should go through holus bolus, nothing omitted, all in a lump. The lot. Holus bolus, the lot.
Right. It's a juggler or conjurer. It's a particularly nauseous hash of meat, cold, and it's all at one go, all in a lump, that sort of thing.
All in a lump.
Ruth to choose.
Good heavens. May I just have a little...
Have a confer.
Tete-a-tete,
Have a chat.
Excuse me. Do you really?
It's up to you,
Up
dear.
to you.
I don't know any Latin.
The ball's in your court.
Yeah,
The ball's in my court.
We're making advice only.
Oh, I see.
We're with you every inch of the way.
Captain up there sleeping there.
Well, I don't know. Jane's 17th century juggler. I don't think it sounds like that at all. Neither does it sound like Frank's cold shepherd's pie. That sounds most unappetising, that. But my eminent colleagues by here say that they think it might be Mr. Balfour's all-in-one or one for all, or whatever it was. And as I don't know any Latin at all, I think I'll have to go with them. And I think it's yours, Doctor.
Ah, that was Robert Burchfield, true or bluff?
Well, now you shall learn your first Latin word.
Yet another one of the very few words in this programme that I've ever known. Holus bolus means all together, all in a lump, all at one go. Here's a nice one. It's not spelt backwards, is it? It looks at the Ototoi, Arthur.
Now, if you want the very best kind of ototoi, you must go to northern Siberia, north of Vladivostok, that section of land that looks across to Japan, because there they have the very best kind of seashells. And if you want the very best kind of mother of pearl, it is to northern Siberia that you must go, because the seashells there are particularly rich in mother of pearl, multicoloured mother of pearl.
You'd have to want it rather a lot to go that far, wouldn't you, Arthur? But some people may, you never know. Melvyn's go now.
Well, ototoi is a straightforward gift to Greek scholars, and obviously the three of you will have no trouble with this at all. There ought to be, as you all know, an exclamation mark after it. It was a cry uttered by the ancient Greek when he was in dire trouble, usually when he was being murdered, as he is half the time in Homer. Ototoi, ototoi, he used to cry. Ototoi. A rough English equivalent from my scholar friend on the left would be words to the effect of alas or woe is me.
Right, now Ruth is going to tell you.
Well, ototoi. It's a lovely word, isn't it? And this is my favourite word, actually, of all of them. Because,
what does it mean?
Well, now just... It is an a South American, I should say, rodent. And it's the equivalent to our little field mouse. Except that it's got much bigger ears than our field mouse and much hairier. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you like to look at it, the female is always in a semi-state, a semi-permanent state of pregnancy. Yes.
Really? Heavens to Betsy.
Heavens to Betsy, yes, you're right there.
Well, it's mother of pearl. You've got to go a long way for it. It's a delightful little rodent, and it is a Greek cry of grief. Frank.
What bugs us with this is the oi is such a curious conclusion of a word, either from Siberia or South America. Very strange, isn't it? So we rather think that a Greek who's got a pebble in his sandal or something might well go, "Oh, die!" And therewith, going down with the flags flying, we choose Melvyn's definition.
Oh, yeah, the cry of grief, Melvyn. Own up. He's got it there. Yes, It sounded so likely, it sounded unlikely. Quick, the last word comes up. Oh, very quick. And that word is as good a one as I've seen. Froof. Frank.
It's a word like supine and akimbo, which describes an attitude of the human body, in this case, lying flat on the back with arms and legs outstretched.
That'll do. Very quickly, Robert.
Well, the froof is an instrument used for boring holes in an...
That'll do. Boring holes?
With an auger.
Yes, oh, splendid. Jane.
Well, actually, the word is Dutch. That's why it's got two O's. It's pronounced frofa, and it's the name of a type of parchment
Lovely.
on which diplomas were written.
Just enough. It's a line spread eagle. It's something for boring things. An auger, you said. Yes, part of an auger. And it is this sort of parchment. Arthur, home in.
Oh, Lord. It can't be Jane, I don't think. I don't think that it's blanky boots, lofty boots. I think it's Bob.
Robert.
Very fitting, the final one for the OED.
Who knows whether you are right or wrong? Only Robert Burchfield. He must now own up.
With an air of triumph.
You're right! I'm so pleased you're telling the truth there. When you've done the deceiving throughout, it is as though you, because of your job, have been lying, whereas the rest have simply been teasing. But there, the last one was that. Oh, dear me, yes, 5-3. In this last one, Arthur Marshall has triumphed.
Hey!
And so overcome with emotion were the gallant losers. Just before then, they were actually applauding. Good yes. So now we leave the skeletons to rattle unheard in the Oxford English Dictionary until perhaps next time. Meanwhile, we say goodbye from Melvyn Bragg, Robert Burchfield, Ruth Madoc, Jane Lapotaire, Arthur Marshall, Frank Muir.
Goodbye.
And goodbye. Well, hello. Here we are again with television's answer to find the lady, and, as usual, in the red corner, Frank Muir.
Good evening. Good evening. My first guest we always have on this series. It'd be inconceivable to do it without her, but this time, instead of making you wait for her, how nice to be able to say on this first programme of the series, here's Hannah Gordon. My next is another bit of a regular. He's a novelist, he's editor and presenter of the South Bank show. He's a man about books in every way. It's Melvyn Bragg.
And, of course, racing lithely onto the park, we have Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Very happy to be here once more, and very happier still to find upon my left the charming Maureen Lipman. And on my right, that admirable actor, Roy Marsden.
Hello.
It comes to mind that I must ring the bell, and ringing the bell produces a word. That word is yarringle. If I remember well, Frank Muir and his team will define yarringle 3 different ways. 2 of them are no good, 1's okay. That's the one that Arthur and his team tried to pick out. So off you gallop, Frank. Yarringle.
Thank you. Yarringle is a crude form of lifting apparatus used roughly at the time that the Mary Rose was first afloat. It was used for lifting boats or boat-shaped objects, but not that size, usually rather smaller, about dinghy size. And it was 2 baulks of timber, tied at the bottom, lashed, as we say, at the bottom in the Navy, lashed at the bottom into an inverted V, stuck in the mud, end of the boat put over, haul and push, and up she comes. We call them sheer legs, also.
You've made it live, as usual.
No music this time, but plenty of time for that, I've no doubt. Now, Melvyn, it's your go.
The yarringle is one of many dialect words for the woodpecker, the bird that pecks at tree trunks. It's the Shropshire version, and like a lot of dialect words, it changes subtly right across the country. In Berkshire, people from Berkshire will know it's called the yargle. In the southern part of Leicestershire, it's the yaffler. In Cumberland, it's the yargler.
Oh.
But yarringle is the Shropshire dialect word for woodpecker.
OK, so they say. Let's see what Hannah tells us.
Well, a rayingle, or a yarringle, is a simple homemade gadget made of wood around which a skein of wool can be wound into a ball. And it looks like a little wooden signpost, and it's got these 2 arms. And you take the skein of wool, you put it round like this, and the lady sits there making it into a ball. And that is... I won't try and say it again.
It's an awkward word, really. Yarringle or yarringle. It's a lifting device, says Frank. It's for winding wool, and it's a woodpecker, but only in Shropshire. And Arthur will pick one of those.
Half a jiff.
Certainly.
Really? Well, now, this skein of wool, I can't see why they should bother with a yarringle, because you've always got a friend or somebody who will hold up the skein of wool. On the other hand, I am rather taken with it. This Shropshire woodpecker and Henry VIII's lifting apparatus. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
Plunge, Arthur.
I'm going to plunge. My chums, I'm afraid I have to disagree with my chums, who are all for you, Frank. I mean, in this sense.
Thank you.
But I'm going to go for Hannah's cane wool thing.
The object used for winding wool, Hannah, you said it, true or bluff? Bullseye, Arthur!
Well done.
You followed your own path and to triumph. Splendid.
That's quite enough of that, Arthur, for this series.
Will it last? But yarringle, yes, it's a little bit of wood you wind the wool round. Here we have choco, that's how I'd pronounce it. Arthur's go.
New Zealand, as you know, has 2 main islands. Come with me, if you will, to the northern one.
Bean.
Well, come again. And into a little vegetable garden, where you will find amateur gardeners tending They are chocos. It's a sort of climbing cucumber, but has a great advantage over the cucumber in that it doesn't have to be used raw. It can be used cooked, and if you simmer it gently, it's said to have the taste of sweetened marrow. There now.
Mm-hmm. Now it's Roy Marsden's turn.
All over the world, people have adorned or scarified their bodies by either cutting them or tattooing them, using knives, pins, needles. And in Peru, the style is called choco. And what they do there is they take knives, put them in the fire, red hot, and then cut into the body and rub in vegetable dyes of all different colours. Yeah? Oh,
No.
All right, sorry. It's a Peruvian style of body marking.
Right, now, Maureen, your go.
The choco, or choco, is to Japan roughly what the Gulf Stream is to Western Europe. In other words, it's a warm current of water which affects the climate. So you would not, for example, in Japan get quite so many almond blossoms if you didn't have a choco.
It's
Well,
Japanese wind.
they say that it's this New Zealand vegetable like a climbing cucumber. It's a warm current in the water, and it's that form of face decoration or face mutilation, whatever you think. Frank, you have a choice?
Come on.
Arthur.
Oh, give him half a jip, Arthur. Half
You
a
jiffy
jip.
snatcher of all time. And come on. Well, it can't... I'd picture a cucumber climbing to get away from Auckland, North Island, or New Zealand.
Well, wouldn't you?
Peru cuts, cutting effect. They do, of course, red hot. Very cold in Peru. Take a long time to get a knife red hot. Japanese wind is interesting thought. Now, it must be Arthur's cucumber.
Arthur's climbing cucumber. Yes, he did say that. True or bluff, Arthur?
Oh, dear.
Well done. It is. Choco is a vegetable in Auckland or in that part of New Zealand anyway. Fogey is the next word. And Melvyn, it's your go.
Well, fogey's a Victorian cant word, and it refers to the butt end of your old cigar, the final bit. And in Victorian times, you can find an example of this particularly in Dickens' Bleak House, children used to hang around outside hotels and gentlemen's clubs. They were known as fogey dobbers, and they picked up these butt ends of cigars thrown out by people like Frank coming out of their clubs, and they would recycle them and sell it as pipe tobacco. So fogey is the butt end of old cigar.
Right.
Goodness me.
A fogey is a Scottish bumblebee, and it's quite a big bumblebee. Its real name is Bombus muscorum. I mean, that's the Latin name for it. It's quite unusual in that in springtime it makes a little nest out of moss. But you've got to be very careful because it's very irritable during this period of time, so you've got to sort of cave muscorum bombus at that particular time. It's a Scottish bumblebee.
Let's hear from Frank.
You are probably under the impression that an old Cornish tin mine consisted of a tube, a chimney sticking up in the air, and lots of underground workings, all wet and nasty as in Poldark. But there's more to it than that, because what do you do when they've dug out the ore? You've got to do something with it. I mean, you can't sort of post it in a parcel to London or something. No, you've got to melt it down to get the tin out of the ore. So there's a stone building standing next to the top of the pit head. And in that building they have kilns, they chuck the ore in and light furnaces underneath, and the tin melts off, and terribly exciting. And that stone house is called the blowing house, but to the employees, to an old tin miner, fogey.
Well. Had me on the edge of my seat there, Frank, as so often. It's a smelting house or blowing house. It's a cigar butt, and it's a little furry friend, a Scottish bumblebee. Roy, to choose?
Right, Melvyn. The curious word fogey. I mean, I've heard of the word stogie, meaning, you know, the butt end of a cigar. And, of course, wouldn't we know, there are bound to be two words totally similar for it. Cigar, fogey dobbers. Good, fogey dobbers. Unsure. Bumblebees. I didn't know bumblebees or bees indeed made nests.
Neither did I.
In moss. Or anything else.
Honey?
And you, sir. Poldark, the little hut. All right. Oh, I shall go for the bumblebee, please.
The bumblebee of which Hannah spoke. Here it comes, true or bluff? Yes!
Building a nest.
Didn't know much about bumblebees, but you knew enough. Yes, that's what it means. A fogey is just that. Let's ring our little bell again and see what we get this time. Peeg or piag. All sorts of pronunciations, I dare say. Roy, your turn.
Donkeys, asses, horses, means of transport before carts. They would use panniers on the sides of the horse and the front of the saddle, quite often made of basket work. It would be quite large, carrying quite heavy objects, or indeed peat or corn or whatever. Gaelic word, peeg. That's what they mean. The name of the panniers, of the baskets.
Oh, a little bit more. A coda, yes.
Thank
now,
you.
Maureen.
Yes, a peeg is a kind of wampum. Shall I go on? Please. Fine. It's a sort of currency used among the Red Indians of Massachusetts. It consists of beads of different varieties and colours, white beads and purple beads, and a little laughing water when she went out shopping would have to remember that a purple bead was twice as much as a white bead.
Well, she would, wouldn't she, really? Yeah. Would. She'd have to. Yes, now it's Arthur. Arthur.
A peeg was a homemade firework made by North Country boys in the last century, composed of damp gunpowder and iron filings. And they used to form them into a sort of cone. And then the top was lit, and sparks were given off. But the exciting thing was that as the cone got bigger and bigger all the way down, the sparks and iron filings and hot stuff shooting about became larger and larger. Picture the excitement.
Yeah.
We used to have those. They're called Mount Vesuvius footballs.
Right, absolutely right. In the olden times, peeg.
Well, well.
But ours didn't light if they were damp.
Oh, enough of the reminiscence. What they say is it's kind of a donkey basket, pannier, a pair of panniers, token money or wampum, and that kind of firework that Arthur told you about. Now, Melvyn, your choice.
Well, I think that the panniers, the donkey's panniers, didn't sound particularly good until the word was pronounced with a Gaelic intonation, which made it sound absolutely right. But then we're dealing with an actor man who can make anything seem Gaelic if he wants to. So I wasn't believing it until you said the Gaelic, but I'd rather pass for a moment. I think that the homemade fireworks and the iron filings and the gunpowder, again, that word seems to relate to that sort of thing, iron. On the other hand, it seems such a long way from purple beads in Massachusetts and Red Indians that I think that I'm going to plump for that.
Plump? You've plumped, Melvyn. Oh, I am. Just a little game within a game. I just, so glad when someone decides to do it. But it was, now you see I'm all so excited. It was Maureen who did it, said it. True or bluff, Maureen, you've been plumped for. Yes, peeg is actually wampum or plumpum. I don't know, but it's token money to all. What an exciting juncture. Sanitar, I think I'd call it, Hannah?
Sanitar. Sanitar is it's an Asiatic bird, which is sort of colloquially known as the Indian jungle babbler, because it's very talkative. It's distantly related to the British jay. That's it, really.
You don't, you know.
What, Peter James?
Just a few deft strokes and you leave it there. Right, it's Frank's go now.
I'm sorry, this is rather technical.
Writing a letter home.
I'm trying to simplify it. It's a sort of chemical thing, really, and I'll keep it in words of one syllable. It's a kind of isomeric terpenoid alcohol, which is distilled from the juice, from the resin of the sandalwood tree. It seems to be little of no use, generally speaking, but American biologists, who else other than Butt, have discovered that if you lightly spray male cockroaches with a little of this, it visibly increases their urge to mate.
Is that something that one might require? I should have thought the opposite would have been the
If
thing.
you're a lady cockroach, it's a riveting interest.
What a straight man I am. Yes. Melvyn, it's your go now.
Well, the sanitar, as you would expect, is, of course, a Russian hospital orderly, and he tries to make sure that the sick and wounded are kept in sanitary conditions. Readers of the Rogue Harris Chronicle will be interested and perhaps rather surprised to know that Walpole, for a time, worked as a sanitar in Russia just before the revolution. Anyway, that's what a sanitar is, a Russian hospital orderly.
Goodness gracious.
So, they say it's a Russian hospital orderly. It's a very noisy sort of bird, and it's something like terpsichorean alcohol. Now, I don't guarantee the adjective, but it's a sort of alcohol, and Maureen Lipman can choose one of those.
Okay, well, I'll start with Frank and his visible cockroach. I don't know about that one. I like the idea of a lot of American scientists all clubbing round and standing about to try and make a cockroach visibly look as if it wants to mate. And I'd like to see film of that, please, Melvyn, on the South Bank show.
You can have my share.
We're an arts programme.
Now, Melvyn's Russian orderly, I may come back to. It sounds so very like it should be that I not only suspect him of a bluff, I suspect him of a double bluff. It is dangerous, Frank, you're right. And then there's Hannah's Asiatic bird, which was so short. It doesn't sound a bit like an Asiatic bird, and it's such a short clue.
It's a short bird.
It's a short bird, yes, it is. It's a short, squat bird that visibly looks as if it wants to mate, presumably. So I think I'll just take a wild guess at it. I think I'll say that it is the Russian orderly.
The Russian hospital orderly, Melvyn. True or bluff? Here it comes. Bullseye! A sanitaire is a Russian hospital order. I still say you would spray them to stop them mating. That would be the idea I would have in mind.
Spoil sport.
No, once I get an idea in my head, it's difficult getting out. Aurelian is the next word. Maureen.
Oh, yes, now an Aurelian is the master bell, usually the oldest bell, in a peal of bells. And it is the bell which determines the musical pitch of all the other bells.
Okay.
Oldest.
Okay.
The
Now,
oldest bell, yes, generally speaking, yes.
it's Arthur.
Aurelian is a jumbo-sized fan behind which susceptible ladies can conceal themselves when gentlemen are leering at them. And, of course, it is a French word, Aurelian. And there's a portrait in the Louvre of King Philip of Valois peering out rather roguishly himself from behind a jumbo fan made of peacock feathers.
Not the same fan as the lady.
Very much.
Oh.
Very much.
Oh.
Caught in an off moment.
Yes, yes. Life ran very high in those days, Frank. Now, whose goes it? It's, yes, it's Roy's, yes.
Aurelian is indeed a French word, a military term. Army on the march, or lining itself up for battle, forms a line. At the end of the line is the weakness. It can be outflanked by cavalry or by men rushing around the sides. So you built at either end a tower or an earthworks in which you put gun emplacements, and you could also use it to protect your own cavalry. So at the end of earthworks or ramparts or lines, you would have two small towers or basket worked ramparts, called Aurelians.
You got there. You got there. That's splendid. It was a large fan, they said. It was a gun tower of sorts, and it was a bell, a very major sort of bell. Hannah's choice.
No.
Take no notice, they said.
You can't have Arthur peeping behind a fan.
Well, he said it was a big fan.
I say, look here.
Yes, that's what we're going to get. Well, I shall start with Arthur's the big fan to hide behind. I wanted to know how big a fan. Could you hide your entire self behind this fan?
Enormous, dear.
Enormous fan. It does. You said it was a French word.
Yes.
Yes. Well, it does sound very French, and it's. I shall think about that one. I'm now going on to Maureen's old bell. Frank hissed to me at one point that he was a bell ringer. He'd never heard of it, but. Never
He's
mind.
got the height for it, hasn't
You see,
he?
I always thought that the pitch was determined by a sort of little bell, by a sort of high, high bell, but there we are. And then we had the towers at either end of the line of battle. I wondered if these towers moved, you see, with the line.
No.
They didn't. I see. So I think it's, although I don't know very much about military things, it is obviously, I think, a French word, and I think it's the tower.
That's what Roy said. He did say it was a tower with all things on there. True or bluff?
Arthur
Has to own up.
Uneasy.
He's got it there. It's true. Very well done. It's an Aurelian. I won't go through what he said, but it's something to do with a gun tower and guns and embattlements and the like. 3-all. Needle match, we have Jan Pan and Frank.
In the days of the British Raj, in India, when the Sahib and the Mem Sahib wants to go to polo or shopping, whatever they went to, how do they get there? Very dusty, very hot, in janpan, thrown like a chair with a top, curtain sides, picked up 2 poles, picked up by 4 janpan wallahs, and this is most essential, 1 only on each corner. If you've got all 3 on one handle, Sahib was in for trouble. Janpan, carriage, India.
Righty-ho, now, Melvyn.
Well, janpan is one of the many varieties of China tea. It's said to be slightly scented with mimosa. It was most popular in the late Victorian age, and one of the reasons it was popular, maybe one of the reasons it died out as well, is that the tea leaves of janpan were extra large, and so they were very popular with the Victorian housemaids who used to request their mistresses to get this tea, because if you could sprinkle the damp tea leaves over the carpet, you could brush up the dust without it rising and affecting the rest of the room. So janpan is basically a variety of China tea, but it had this secondary use in large, dusty English houses in the late 19th century.
Hannah.
Janpan was a particular kind of walking stick, which gentlemen were very fond of using in the time of Queen Anne. It was made of a particular kind of very hard bamboo, and it was called a janpan because it came from an island, so-called janpan, in the Portuguese West Indies.
They say then that it is a walking stick, certain sort of walking stick, certain kind of China tea, and rather posh sort of sedan chair. And Arthur makes his choice of those.
Oh dear, we're in a terrible muddle here.
Oh, come on, Arthur, really.
Chin up.
Which chin?
Anything to prevaricate any old chin up.
However,
up like a roll top.
I don't think sampan.
Yeah.
I don't think it can be. That's an Indian conveyance, isn't it? Yes, I don't think it's Frank. Well, of course it might be. Look me in the face. Oh, well, don't bother.
Must I? Must I?
I can't go for this China tea with enormous tea leaves to help Victorian housemaids and so on. Queen Anne walking stick. Oh dear, that sounds so possible. I don't think it's the janpan, sampan, or the China tea. Hannah, dear, I think it's your walking stick.
she did say so. Hannah, own up. Wrong. Let's have the true one. Here it comes.
Oh, it is.
It is. There. I do really believe that's one of the very few words I ever knew or know on this programme. But perhaps it was sampan. Perhaps it both means... But anyway, janpan means that sort of sedan chair. Let's have another word. That word being werp is that word. Arthur's werp.
An unlovely word for a relatively unlovely thing. It's a Lincolnshire farmer's word for a rather ghastly kind of turnip that's not really possible to consider eating by humans, but is fed to cattle who are very, very pleased to have werps.
Now, Roy Marsden.
Werp is an Anglo-Saxon word. It is a measure of distance, and it is judged by the length at which an object, and it was thought to be an average-sized stone. That's all we know. We don't actually know the weight. Average-sized stone could be thrown by an average-sized man. Werp.
In Ireland, it's a willy.
Is it? A left or right willy? Werp.
Righty-ho, now, Maureen. Let's hear.
A werp is a strain, a muscle strain or a wrench. It's actually rather onomatopoeic, because you can imagine somebody lifting a rather heavy object and going whoop as it falls out of joint. And that's what a werp is.
That's it. Well, it's this measure of distance, Old English, Anglo-Saxon. It's a sprain or strain, and it's this rather inedible turnip. Frank?
Oh, is it me?
It is.
I'm delighted too, I must say.
Well, please.
We don't think it's the turnip, Arthur, no.
If you buck up, we might get another one.
They want another one.
I wonder.
Or it could, not the other one. It's Maureen.
It's Maureen. She said it was a sprain. True or
So
bluff?
that's 4 each.
No. Let's have the true definition. Let us have the true one. We must have it. Lo, where it comes. Yes. It is the measure of distance. We've just got time. Not nice time, but just time for another one. Oh, dear. Graunchy is the next one, the last one. Melvyn, swiftly.
A graunchy is a Scottish sobriquet for the person who looks after a flock of geese. A goose herd was once called a graunchy.
I'll have to stop you there, my dear chap. You've said enough, Hannah.
It's a New Zealand adjective meaning difficult.
And
Difficult.
Frank?
Excessive flatulence caused by eating out of doors instead of indoors in sheep.
Flatulence in sheep. Why not? It's got to have a name. A goose herd, and it just simply means troublesome. Dart in, Roy.
Antipodean, I think it's Hannah.
She said that it was troublesome, didn't she? Yes.
I
yes.
did.
Well done.
You didn't need another, did you, Frank? But sport as you are, you don't mind. Look, there it is.
No.
5-4. Arthur Marshall's team has won. And with one drooping eye, let's have a little look at the sporting losers. What lovely people they are. There we are. We shall be back next time, I don't doubt, with some more seconds from the Oxford English Dictionary. Until then, we say goodbye. Melvyn Bragg.
Goodbye.
Roy Marsden.
Goodbye.
Anna Gordon.
Goodbye.
Maureen Lipman. Frank Muir.
Goodbye.
Arthur Marshall. And goodbye. Hello again. Call my bluff, and in the grey strip, Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Delighted to be here again with the winning team of, on my left, Maureen Lipman. And on my right, Roy Marsden.
Hello.
And old lofty Frank Muir.
Good evening. And of course, back comes our victorious non-winning team of last week from the world of acting, Hannah Gordon. And from the world of books, Melvyn Bragg.
We summon a word, and that word is gubbins. And this time, Arthur Marshall and his team will define gubbins 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are absolutely no good. They're stumers. One's okay. That's the one that Frank and Co. tried to hunt down. So, Arthur, what of gubbins?
Gubbins is a term from the old printing trade, when print had very laboriously to be set by hand, letter by letter. And gubbins was a sort of collective term for any print that was worn out and battered and out of date or clogged up with ink or whatever it may be, and which had to be boiled down and then reset. It's a word for a worn-out type, such as you see sitting before you.
Oh, very good.
Really? You pinched that off, Frank. That's much
I
his
wish
style.
I'd said that.
Oh, yes. I can understand that.
What a fount he is.
Oh, here we go. Let's try Roy.
You've heard the phrase. Have you got the gubbins, please? Could you pass the gubbins? It's slang word. It's Victorian, and it means food or soup, tea. And it comes from Mr. and Mrs. Josiah Gubbins were part of that philanthropic movement of the 70s, of 18s, who, along with Bedeck, Coots and Peebles, used to go down in the East End, build houses. Soup kitchens was their thing, Mr. and Mrs. Gubbins. And the name Gubbins comes from, can I have some free soup or free tea? Gubbins.
So he says. Well, now, Maureen Lipman.
Gubbins was rather an offensive word to describe a group of a community, rather gypsy-like community, who settled on Dartmoor and proceeded to pillage and thieve and vandalise and wander about. And you'll read about the Gubbins in Charles Kingsley's Westward Ho. Or is it Eastward Ho? Or is it Ho?
Depends where you're standing.
Well, it's a sort of soup kitchen. It's this group of gypsies, and it's battered type. Frank.
Nat Gubbins, but not gypsy. Can't have a gypsy called Gubbins.
No G on the end of Nat Gubbins, as you recall.
Ah, yes.
If that helps.
Was there a G on the end of the gypsy? There's a G at the beginning of the gypsy, isn't there? Right.
Should have shut up.
Let's let us pursue this down to the last minute. Worn-out type is very interesting, melted down, and indeed so is free soup, Gubbins. But it can't be either of those or gypsy. That's all there is, isn't it? I think it's the gypsy. I'll give you my reasons in writing later.
Good. Well,
it
certainly, it was Maureen who said it. She has to own up now. True or bluff? Perfectly true. You don't want to give a reason or two, do you? I mean, why should you in your moment of time?
No, because I might apply the same technique to the next word.
Good thinking, Frank. I'll hurry on. Now, the next word is, well, I'd say Calada, I suppose. Frank, your turn.
It's sort of Calada more. Calada, probably. Only it's a tribe in Java. And when Java was a Dutch protectorate, it was the Calada tribe which provided most of the best form of house servants for the Dutch settlers. And the only thing more I can tell you about it is, besides being very tall, but then that's not unusual there, They had blue eyes.
All of them?
They only have two. Yes, both eyes were blue.
Now, let us see what Melvyn has to tell us.
Well, we decided that the pronunciation had to be Kalada for what the word really is, not a minor Turkish official, as you might originally have thought, Arthur, but he's a rather grand Persian magistrate. He's a senior legal official. He listens to and gives judgments on and rulings upon personal and commercial grievances. He's rather like our ombudsman, and Kalada has been an official and a term in use in that part of the world for over 2,600 years.
Oh, good.
That's frightfully precise, isn't it?
Hooray.
2,600. Jolly good. Hannah?
No, fool your Bragg.
No.
A calada, it's the obsolete name for a bird which is nowadays known as the thick-kneed buzzard.
What buzzard, dear?
The thick-kneed.
Really?
Yes. It's a term that does still linger on. Calada, not thick-kneed buzzard. It's in heraldic circles when you might get a sort of calada cushiont or a not a cushion but a cushiont or a calada rampant. You know.
Well, it's a Javanese tribe with lots of blue eyes. It's a Persian magistrate, and it's a thick-kneed buzzard. Arthur, wonderful choice for you.
Just a chat with the team.
Please do.
A song.
Not just now.
Well, now, the Persian magistrate, the ombudsman, in operation for century after century, I can't believe they've had... Well, never mind. Dear, your heraldic buzzard, did you say thick-kneed?
Several times, yes.
I thought my ears were playing me false. Never mind. I can't think it's your heraldic buzzard. Why they all should be blue-eyed, I can't conceive. But I think it's poor old Lofty's Javanese tribe.
You think it is? Blue eyes or no? Frank said it. True or bluff, Frank?
What do you think it is?
Nothing to do with the blue-eyed Javanese. Who gave the true definition of Calada or Calada?
It's
Here's your common or garden thick-kneed buzzard. 2-0 so far, and Woods is the way I'd pronounce it. It's Roy Marsden's turn.
Woods. It's pronounced Woods, in fact. It is the name of a container for pressing plants, flowers, to travel. If it's got to be transported from 200 or 300 miles. Woods, named after Heinrich Woods, who invented the thing, 19th century. Thank you. Your help.
What does it do, though?
It is a press, a container for flowers.
To a plant, it dies.
No. You know how you press flowers in books or leaves? This is to travel them. You don't want to carry books everywhere. Ridiculous?
Thank you.
Well, now let's hear from Maureen. Here she goes.
It's woods, and it's a special kind of steel produced in southern India for making knives and forks of a very, very high calibre. Would you like me to tell you how it's made?
Up to a point. From about A to K.
Yeah, okay. Well, what you do is you fuse together magnetic iron oxide. I won't tell you. It's very good.
Do! Oh, we'd love to know.
Fuse things together all that.
Oh, you're stopping there.
Yes,
Yes. Probably while you're ahead. Now, Arthur's go.
Woods was a very, very cheap type of Balkan tobacco that was not only smoked by Russian soldiers, but also chewed by them. And I'm very sorry to strike a distasteful note on the programme, but the result of this chewing was the most ghastly halitosis. And so the British soldiers hurried away in the Crimean War from the Russians for that particular reason, because they smelt so appallingly from this woods.
Well, that
It is then.
Rewriting history.
Well, I know. Poetic license, who knows? But it's Indian steel. It's this box that a botanist would use for flowers or things he intended to press, and it's this tobacco. Balkan tobacco, I think Arthur said. Melvyn, choose.
Well, we think it's the woods. The woods are full of them.
Oh, it's catching, Melvyn. It's catching.
I'm rather inclined to it being a container for pressing plants, but I'd like to hold that for a second, because the early 19th century would be about the time that would be in common use. The idea of it being tobacco, which gave the Russians halitosis, which caused us to run away in the Crimean War, is not quite as attractive. But because the other thing, the steel, was beyond explanation, that gives it a certain authenticity. What you can't explain must be true on this programme. And so for that reason and no other, I think I'll go for the whatever you couldn't explain, Maureen.
The oil
if I can
inside
explain,
or whatever it was.
stop doing
She did say it. Maureen, true or bluff? She's got it there somewhere. There. Oh, yes. Now, woods, or pronounce it as you will, is Indian steel. 3-0. Arthur, was it a flash in the pan last time?
No.
No. There's plenty of time here. Telson is the next word. Melvyn Bragg to tell you about it.
Well, Telson is quite simple. In the United States, a Telson is the colloquial name for a steam-driven pile driver. It's said to be called after a Pennsylvania engineer of the name of Telson, who in the 1860s devised one himself to sink mine shafts in the coal fields around Pittsburgh. So a Telson is a steam-driven pile driver brought into being in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Might easily be so. Now, Anna Gordon.
A Telson was a Norman-French handbell which was rung by a priest in the field of war to bring the soldiers to pray, presumably while they weren't actually fighting, during a lull in the battle. And it's said that William the Conqueror, when he arrived in 1066, when he came ashore, he called the Telson bell to be rung in order that Thanksgiving might be given that they'd got there.
Splendid. Now it's Frank's turn. Here he goes.
I'm just musing then for a moment that how strange it is that so infrequently when we're all sitting around here comfortable and happy that we discuss the rear ends of shellfish. but that is what we are going to do now, because Telson is in fact a zoologist's name for the central rear segment of shellfish. Central rear.
Yes.
If you think of a lobster's tail fin, it's that. That is the Telson. A king crab has a shiny, tall middle spike. That is its Telson.
I'm not quite clear about central rear.
It's in the middle of the rear. What is your problem?
Thanks a whole heap.
I like the way you did it with your hat. They used to do it with the magic lantern and show the shadows on them.
I could do that.
Yes, I bet you could. At the drop of a hat. Anyway, but they say, well, he says it's part of a shellfish, the middle of the rear part of the shellfish. Pile driver, it is, and a Norman handbell. Sounds like a name, Norman handbell. Roy's turn, though.
Right, now, Melvyn. Mr. Telson and his pile driver. Do you know, I would have thought, I'm sure I'm totally wrong, 1860 would be far too late, 40 years too late for pile drivers.
Not in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Not in Pittsburgh. No, I will dismiss him. I'm sure Stevens and that crowd would have done it. Next one. He who tolls the Telson. If there was a bell called a Telson, I would have thought Shelley, Byron, that crowd would have written about it, wouldn't they?
How do you know they didn't?
Perhaps they did. You're right.
David Attenborough's done mine.
I think it must be the sort of prawns bum, I'm sure.
That's what Frank said, or he didn't say it quite so sort of succinctly, but that's more or less what he was at.
One does strive to keep vulgarity. It's bad enough with Arthur, but with you...
That won't use prom.
That's the answer.
Yeah! Well done. Back end of a shellfish, it seems. Kelson. Broken your duck now, Arthur. Splendid. Pennillion is the next word. Maureen Lipman to tell you about it.
Yes.
Pennillion is a West Country word for a sort of herb, rather like fennel. And it grows in places like Dartmoor and Exmoor. There's an old wives' tale that dried, powdered pennillion, sprinkled on a snake bite, will draw out the poison. Adders and puff adders and stuff like that.
Right, well, now...
I don't.
Arthur tells you. Arthur.
A pennillion is a series of improvised verses sung or spouted impromptu at a Welsh Eisteddfod. Usually in... Bob.
No, I just wondered if there was any way of stopping or doing
May I go on?
Sorry, dear
Usually in the form of a saga in praise of somebody like Blodwyn or Owen Glendower or one of those, and even better, accompanied by the loud twanging of harps.
Oh, Lord. Right, now, Roy Marsden's go.
The word pennillion is a slightly earlier word from which most of us know the word pennant, a small flag. It comes from lancers on the end of their lances, 19th century, would have a small pennant on the end of it. Go back 300 years or 4, and the lances of the knights, especially at jousts, would have a pennillion, which was an even smaller little cloth flag on the end of their lance.
Let me rehearse those again for you. It's a flag on the end of a lance, little pointed flag. It's like fennel, said Maureen, and it's an improvised verse at a nice Eisteddfod. Hannah's choice? Strike, Hannah, strike.
Yes, right. The herb for the snake bites that Maureen said, I don't know a great deal about herbs. I know a bit. I've never heard of one for snake bites, but I've never had to deal with one, so maybe that's why. But I think I shall leave the snake bite herb at the moment. Arthur? No, I'm going to leave Arthur for a minute, and I'm going on to Roy to talk about the tiny pennants. It's very sort of right sounding, that, because it sounds like flags and pennants and French ancestry and all that kind of thing. But nevertheless, I'd like to come back to Arthur because there's a certain Welshness about the verses for Blodwyn and the harps. So I'm going to say that it's the impromptu verses.
Impromptu verse, which Arthur spoke wrong. True or bluff? It's true! Yes, it is. You can't stop them doing it at Eisteddfod. They get up and they improvise that sort of verse. Probably very good. 4-1. Oh, dear. Well, tar. Looks like hat spelled backwards, but it can't be that. Hannah, your go.
Tar, it's a variety of coarse grass which the natives of Borneo weave into mats. And not just mats for walking on, but mats which they hang in front of sort of windows in their huts. And they sprinkle them with water liberally and often, because if it's a very hot and windy day, the wind blowing through the wet tars will cool them.
It should catch on. Right.
This is a lovely word, this. You'll like this.
Oh,
tar
good.
is like sort of pish. And lard. Or, in French, tiens. It's a expression, an old expression of aristocratic surprise, tinged with mild unconcern. It's, "My lord, the west wing has broken down, and her ladyship has eloped with a second groom." Tar.
You thought that Henry Irving had passed to where the honeysuckle ever twined. Oh, no, he lives on. However, it's Melvyn's turn now.
You could do the bell.
I know you will.
Well, the answer, as often, lies in the dialect. A dialect spoken in this country at the moment. But in fact, it originates in the north of what used to be called Nigeria. It's a dialect of the Yoruba language, and it's, apart from its exaggerated consonantal sounds, all I have time to tell you is that it's one of the 130 languages or dialects which are currently spoken in this country. Ta.
I think it's still called Nigeria, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to stand here and say it is. But anyway, I just thought it was...
In the north of what used to be called Nigeria might have been cut off.
Oh, you're dead right.
You'll get letters.
Yeah, silly of me. Pretend I didn't speak. Nigerian dialect, or what used to be Nigerian dialect. A sort of exclamation like pish or tush, and a grass mat, damped with water, keep it cool. Maureen.
Tar. Sorry, I'll be with you in a minute. Tar, a variety of coarse grass. That sounds so pretty that I might come back to it. Now, Frank's aristocratic surprise tinged with mild unconcern. As much as I'd like you to do that again.
Oh,
God,
be quite sure.
You must be mad.
I am a bit. And then Melvyn's 130 languages. Well, they're all a bit sort of East African and weird, aren't they? So maybe I should go for Frank's tish, pish, below. But I won't. I think I'll go for Hannah's mats.
Hannah said that. Yes, true or bluff, Hannah? Nothing. Nothing.
I think you were right. Sorry.
I wonder were you wise not to go for Frank's, whatever it was. Whoever. Now we'll know. One of them's got it. And it's Frank. Oh, dear. It is a sort of mild-mannered exclamation.
I think we should revive it, don't you?
Might need it.
You have to have your house burned down.
Let's have another word. 5-1, Arthur.
Oh,
dear,
never mind,
oh dear.
never mind.
No. Don't rub it in. No. Kio. Well, I don't know. Kio or Kioch? I don't know. Arthur will tell us.
Well, now, once again, come with me to New Zealand. And if you've... Frank?
I just said not again.
And if you've been rapped on the head by a kio, you would know all about it, because it is used by the Maori tribe. It's a very, very hardwood club that was used by the Maori tribe for slaughtering animals that they'd captured and finishing them off. Or, I dare say, applying it to their wives, if their wives were being tiresome. A very, very hardwood club for hitting things with.
Right. Now it is Roy Marsden's go.
Kiog. It's a type of small horse, I think probably a pony, Tartar, very hardy, extraordinary to look at. I mean, very rough, huge head, small body, little short, fat legs. But as I said, very hardy, carry a great deal of weight, a great deal of distance. A Tartary horse, Kiog.
Right. Now, Maureen, it's your go.
A kiach is not, as you might think, a kosher restaurant at the top of a hill. A joke which only my mother will understand. It's a Highland Scottish word meaning bothersomeness, vexation, trouble, worry, care, this sort of thing. You'll find it in Robbie Burns, and I would quote you some if I could be sure of my accent, which is Ethiopian.
I was so looking forward. We haven't had Robbie Burns.
We do like Robbie Burns.
Yeah.
All right.
You've got
I've got a bit of Robbie Burns. The lisping infant prattling on his knee does a his weary keach and care beguile.
Oh, I'm glad I asked you to do it. Wonderful. I'm delighted. Well, it's a truncheon from New Zealand. It's a small horse with a large head and hairy knees. And it's trouble or vexation. And it's in Robbie Burns. It is. Frank?
You would? No. But we're all chosen different answers. So, let's get at it. You're trying to ruse me with this New Zealand thing with Kiora, aren't you? Which is Maori for welcome, come in and have some orange juice. It's certainly not bashing you on the head with a club. Kiora, it means welcome in the Polynesian. So that's that, isn't it? Tartar horse. How could it be Keogh with a Tartar? I mean, it'd be... What language might it be, one asks? It could be Scots, though. So, I won't tell you who chose what, but I chose Maureen, her Scottish word.
Robbie Burns. Did he say well, true or bluff? Was it true? Yes! The deceptive thing about Robbie Burns is he always sounds as though he's been made up by someone else, doesn't he? But no, he didn't. He wrote it all himself. Wrote it all himself. Anyway, the Keogh means that, vexation, trouble, irritation, that kind of thing. Goodness me, 6-1. Tappy is the next word.
Yes, I think it is.
Tappy was once an in-word in the drapery trade. Now, that's fairly new, isn't it, the programme?
Very.
For years. It was a word for a little sort of kickback which was given the assistant in a drapery shop when they managed to unload some goods which had been sticking around for a rather long time. In other words, if you managed to unload last year's ball dress on this year's lady, you expected to get a little kickback from the store manager or the shop manager, which is called a tappy for some unknown reason. Tappy carpet, could be.
Could. Melvyn.
That's all there is.
Well, everybody interested in hunting will know that tappy is an old hunting term, which comes out of the middle and late medieval period in this country. And it's a verb. It's to tappy. And when you tappy, it means you crouch down and you hide in the undergrowth. And I imagine, or I would guess, that it originally comes from observing deer who do just that when you're moving in towards the kill. They tend to crouch down and hide in the undergrowth, I am told. I've never hunted deer. And that is called tappying. They tappy. And tappy means that.
What do the deer call it?
Danger, I suppose.
Hannah, your turn now.
Tappy was a Victorian nursery name for water, indeed for tap water, which Victorian children were encouraged to drink in great quantities as it was very good for them. And if a child was very naughty, it could be sent to bed at any time of the day, and it was put on a diet of tappy and bread and tappy.
OK, so it's to hide, duck down if you're a deer, but anyway, to do that anyway. Tap water, Victorian endearment, sort of meaning that, and a commission taken by someone who's selling stuff that's out of fashion. Arthur's choice.
Mr. Polly, all that.
We're more or less agreed on this side, I'm very happy to announce. We throw out this hunting term for crouching down, for deer and all the rest. We throw it out. Much as we love you, Hannah, we throw out your Victorian water and the children with it. And so once more it comes to old Frank again, this sort of backward tip, because it sounds so totally improbable.
You choose it, Arthur?
We choose Frank.
Were you well advised? Frank, was it true or bluff?
Have another go, Arthur.
Think he's patronising you? I think he is. I knew it. And we must have the true one before we draw stumps.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It means what deer do when they duck down as well they might and want to avoid the people trying to hunt them. Goodness me, oh, Arthur. 7-1. Frank Muir's team has distinctly won. Spare a glance for the plucky losers. There they are. We shall have some more steam-driven definitions from the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Till then, goodbye from Roy Marsden.
Goodbye.
Melvyn Bragg.
Bye-bye.
Maureen Lipman. Hannah Gordon. Arthur Marshall. Frank Muir.
Good night.
And goodbye. Hello, this is Call My Bluff, where pale-face speaking with forked tongue is, of course, Frank Muir.
Good evening, good evening. And my first guest is an actress whom we've all loved ever since Madoc, and it's Angharad Rees.
Good evening.
And my next guest is a smith. That doesn't mean he hits anvils with a hammer. His name is Smith, and he's a novelist and Sunday Times columnist, Godfrey Smith.
And, of course, giving it the old college try, we have Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Very nice to be able to welcome back two members of a previously victorious team. On my left, Victoria Wood.
Good evening.
And on my right, Tim Brooke-Taylor.
Good evening.
Now, let's have a little ring at the bell. And as old hands will remember, when that bell rings, a word appears, in this case, chickle. I don't know how you would pronounce it. Chickle. Frank Muir and his team will define chickle 3 different ways. 2 of them are no good. 1 of them's all right. And as you recall, that's the one that Arthur and co try and pick out. So what do you have to say about chickle, Frank?
Just trying to think how else you could pronounce it other than chickle. A chickle is one of those nice words like grid leak and choke, which started out as a sort of semi-slang word and then dropped into the vocabulary of early wireless telegraphy. What it comes down to, basically, at the end of the day, you'll find that a chickle is a coil of copper wire which is inserted into an electrical circuit in order to prevent variations of current from sliding back into your transformer.
What a sport you are to laugh, Arthur. Very good, but very serious stuff. Godfrey Smith now.
Well, a chickle was an Indian army soldier's anglicised version of the Hindu word chikla, which is, of course, in their language, the word they use for a boy or a young person. And ordinary British soldiers up on the frontiers there in the garrisons often used to hire a chikla, or chickle as we would say, as a valet, paying him perhaps a rupee a month for cleaning his brass or blanketing his equipment for him. And it's a charming relic of the old British Raj.
Well, and now it's Angharad Rees.
Chickle is a gooey resin that oozes out of a sapodilla tree, which is an American evergreen, which bears large plum-like edible berries. The chickle plays an important part in American way of life. It is one of the main ingredients of chewing gum.
Chewing gum, of course it is.
I've heard that.
Chiclets, that's why.
You rest your case there, right? Mm-hmm. Let me remind you, they say it's a boy servant. It's the resin used in chewing gum, and, well, it's an electrical device of some sort. Arthur's choice.
Well, now, we've been having a little chat.
And we've enjoyed it.
Angharad, chickle, I think there's an American chewing gum called Chiclet. And I think perhaps this is a terrible plan to mislead us with your edible berries.
Would we do that?
But, of course, it may well be right. I never go in this game, really, for anything Hinduish. No. And your soldier's name for a valet or a youth. And yet you're looking now awfully suspicious. Frank, it can't be your endless copper coil. Beautifully you rattled it out. What do you think? I think Godfrey's looking guilty.
Yes, I think.
I think it's your Hindu valet.
Well, he did say that. Godfrey said it now.
He's
he
looking
owes up.
something.
True
I'm
or
not sure
bluff?
it's guilty.
No. Now, let's just see whether you were double bluffed or the light. Who gave the true definition?
Oh, Lord.
Yes, it was.
I got it wrong.
And I think sometimes it's pronounced, and even spelt differently, pronounced chicle, but I can't be absolutely sure.
Dear.
But it is the stuff you get in chewing up. Gogga is the way I pronounce the next word. Arthur?
It's actually Goggia. And if you've recently been in Malta, you may have heard people whispering to each other, nudging, and saying he's a Goggia, because they mean he's an inhabitant of the island of Lucca to the west of Valletta. Why do they look apprehensive, you ask? I will tell you. Because Goggia was originally a Mediterranean